Today's topic is the language of othering. In order to discuss the topic of othering, we need to understand what it means first. Othering is experienced when an individual or a group becomes classified in someone else's mind as not one of us, another.
So, does the language of othering feed into the notion of, they are not like us?
Yes, Sally, it does. Spoken words diminish the other person's place and value. Numerous communities that surround us face the struggle of the language of othering on a daily basis in Canada.
So, who experiences othering through language?
The LGBTQ communities, Indigenous and Aboriginal communities, African communities, Asian communities, Muslim communities, Arab communities, and any marginalized person, really.
So, language is a communicative tool that informs and misinforms.
Yes, it uses popular culture, social media, news channels, and educational textbooks, all of which are platforms that contribute to alienation and othering of different groups.
The racial other is bound. It is seen as binary, much like gender, and that means that it looks either good or bad, black or white, and thus there is no in-between. Language can act as a power tool that marginalizes and silences the racial others, or others of any kind.
The acceptable face of the racial other or other has emerged in popular culture, and in media that surrounds us on the daily.
Place becomes race through laws and regulations. Place becomes race in drinking establishments, parks, churches, mosques, synagogues, national borders, streets and shopping malls.
The idea of othering was fed by Samuel Huntington's clash of civilizations theory. This idea of a clash feeds into the ideology of the presumed conflict between West and East. As evidence for his main argument, he cites several examples of cultural fault lines, areas inhabited by incompatible cultural groups, historically challenged by strife. Some examples are Bosnians and Serbs, Turks and Greeks, Jews and Arabs.
Throughout history into our modern times, individuals found numerous reasons, usually racially and gender motivated, to apply language in ways that feeds the divide between groups. The late public intellectual and scholar Edward Said used social media and pop culture as his platform to fight the ideologies of Huntington and expose the language of othering.
We need to make sure we do not misrecognize a group of people for something they are not, and don't identify with. Friedrich Hegel's philosophy of recognition. Recognition has both a normative and a psychological dimension. Arguably, if you recognize another person with regard to a certain feature, as an autonomous agent, for example, you do not only admit that he or she/they have this feature, but you embrace a positive attitude towards them for having this feature. Such recognition implies that you bear obligations to treat them in a certain way. That is, you recognize a specific normative status of the other person, for example, as a free and equal person. In conclusion, racialized and the marginalized groups face inequalities which go beyond individual prejudice within society, but are actually embedded within the foundational structure of society, both at systemic and institutional levels. And we can see examples of this at UBC, at our workplaces, classrooms, hospitals, police stations, justice systems, etc. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed today's discussion focusing on the language of othering.